medical examiner.
I was at one time in that post, yes.
You had Dr. Quincy's job.
That's correct. Dr. Quincy was actually a member of my staff at that time.
Someone on your team that was not Dr. Quincy conducted significant errors while conducting an autopsy.
That's correct. One of my staff members had made an issue. I had issued a private reprimand, and we had handled the issue internally. Once the issue was made public, the firm decided to fire my staff as well as their superior, who was myself.
Let's talk about how that issue went public. Now, you kept those errors hidden from your superiors, like you just said.
That's correct. We believe the issue was held internally, and there was no need to make it a public issue.
That autopsy was for a homicide case.
That's correct.
While you kept those errors hidden, a man was sitting in jail for 2 years.
Someone was convicted due from the autopsy report. That's correct.
For 2 years, while that man was in jail, you kept those errors a secret.
Again, it was an issue that was handled internally. There was no need to bring it out to the public.
2 years later, that conviction got overturned.
That's correct.
That's when you couldn't keep those errors hidden anymore, right, Dr. Lopez?
Again, the issue had been brought out to the press, and due to a public situation, they decided to fire my staff as well as myself, their superior.
Dr. Lopez, when the press got a hold of those errors, they asked you about it.
That's correct.
And you lied to the press about these errors.
I did not tell the press, as again, I believed it was handled internally. That's correct.
Just to be clear, you lied to the press.
I did not tell them about the situation. That's correct.
And that's why you were fired.
That is correct.
Now, Dr. Lopez, I want to talk about what information you relied on to form your opinions. You never conducted an autopsy on Parker Page's body.
Not personally. That was not my job in this case.
But you would agree with me that conducting an autopsy would have been ideal in forming your conclusions.
Absolutely. It certainly would have helped. But again, when one hires a firm in these cases, it's typical that I'm not allowed to examine the body. That's standard practice.
Just to be clear, it would have been ideal for you to conduct that autopsy.
Oh, yes, it always is. But again, typically that's not the case.
Someone else conducted the autopsy in today's case.
That's correct. It was Dr. Quincy who would perform this autopsy.
Exactly, Dr. Lopez. Dr. Quincy had the ideal conditions to form her conclusions.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by ideal conditions.
You would agree with me that conducting an autopsy is an ideal condition to form your conclusions?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Dr. Quincy had that ideal condition.
Dr. Quincy's job was to perform the autopsy. Mine was to analyze her report in this case.
Just to be clear, Dr. Quincy had that ideal condition performing the autopsy.
For her report, absolutely.
Now, Dr. Lopez, because you weren't able to conduct that autopsy, there were some of your conclusions that you weren't able to confirm.
Yes, again, I was never able to come to any certainties in today's case, but I was able to open the door to several other possibilities that Dr. Quincy did not take into consideration.
Okay, Dr. Lopez, let's talk about a few of those conclusions you were never able to confirm. Now, you contend that Parker Page might have had a more severe type of OI.
That's possible, yes.
You've looked at all of Parker Page's medical records.
That's correct.
None of Parker's doctors have ever diagnosed her with a more severe type of OI.
No doctors that are past know. She was diagnosed with type 1 at one point and was not reevaluated from that point on.
Just to be clear, none of the doctors that ever reviewed Parker's case ever diagnosed her with a more severe type of OI.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Response, Your Honor?
Okay.
This witness just talked about a singular diagnosis. I'm just talking about every single doctor that Parker might have seen while facing this condition. He didn't answer that question particularly.
Your objection is overruled. You can answer the question.
I'm going to ask you again, Dr. Lopez. None of Parker's doctors ever diagnosed her with a more severe type of OI.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Now I want to talk about Dr. Quincy. She examined Parker's body.
That's correct.
She didn't diagnose Parker with a more severe type of OI.
No, not in this case. And again, I was never making any diagnosis myself. I believe we should have opened the door to a possibility to make sure that we made the correct diagnosis in today's case.
Just to be clear, Dr. Lopez, out of all of Parker's doctors and the medical examiner who conducted her autopsy, you are the only one who's telling us that there's a possibility of a more severe type of OI.
Absolutely. And in cases important as this, it's very important to look at every aspect and make sure we've covered every angle to make sure the right person is put away.
Okay, Dr. Lopez, let's talk about the bruise on Parker Page's body. You don't contend that Dr. Quincy's analysis of the cause of death is possible.
Absolutely, it's certainly possible, but again, we should keep the door open for other possibilities.
And you don't contend the measurements of the bruise.
I do not. No, those are correct.
So then you know that the capped end of the hiking stick matches the bruise to 1,000th of a centimeter.
Certainly, and again, there's other objects that can, again, create the same possibility.
Dr. Lopez, do you know how much 1,000th of a centimeter is?
I'm very aware, yes.
So you know it's about a width of a sheet of paper.
I assume so, yes.
But you're up here contending that there are many other objects that could match that bruise that exactly.
Absolutely, it's certainly a possibility.
Okay, Dr. Lopez, now I want to talk about your opinions regarding Parker Page's time of death. Now, you would agree with me that Dr. Quincy's use of the formula was appropriate,
Yes, it was done correctly.
and that she incorporated the consideration of temperature in that analysis.
Temperature was taken into consideration, but I can't say the same about her below average size and weight and her disorder.
Let's talk about that below average size, height, and weight. You would agree with me that Parker was a little bit smaller for her age.
Absolutely, she was certainly under average.
But just to be clear for the jury, she was still within normal limits.
Sure, she was still within the normal range, but again, it was below the average number.
Just to be clear, she was still within the normal limit.
That's correct.
Now, Dr. Lopez, I want to go back to talking about that time of death. You also said you adjusted that formula for Parker's OI.
I hadn't made any changes to the formula myself, but I wanted to widen the window of the possibility of her time of death. Let's
Talk about that widened window. Now, you would agree with me that when considering time of death, you look at all the possibilities.
Absolutely, they certainly should take into consideration.
When you look at all those possibilities, you look at which ones would be least likely,
Sure,
and you would look at ones that would be most likely.
absolutely, but again, everything should be taken into consideration.
And after taking everything into consideration, you decide on one time range that is most likely.
That's correct.
Dr. Lopez, 4 and 6 p.m. is the most likely time for Parker Page's death.
Absolutely, it's the most likely case, but again, there's an open window of possibility that it could also have been between 7 and 9 p.m., and we should not rule that out.
But just to be clear, it is most likely that Parker died between 4 and 6 p.m.
Yes,
Now, Dr. Lopez, I want to talk about a few more of those conclusions you were never able to confirm in today's case. Now, you contend that it is a possibility that Parker's mobility caused her death.
that's potential, yes.
Now, you weren't at Calkins on July 14th.
I was not, no.
Someone else in this very courtroom was at Calkins that day.
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
That would be the defendant.
Yes, she was there that day.
In fact, as far as you know, the defendant spent most of the day with her daughter.
I don't know about this.
You read
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
response, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is cross-examination. Furthermore, Dr. Lopez has reviewed the interrogation of the defendant and Detective Chesney, so he has enough background information to answer this question.
Anything further from you?
I'll withdraw my objection, Your Honor.
Very well.
You read that interrogation between the defendant and Detective Chesney.
I did, yes.
So then in that interrogation, you read that the defendant was with her daughter the entire day.
That's what she had said, yes.
So Dr. Lopez, the defendant could have told you if Parker's mobility caused her death.
I was never able to speak to the defendant. In these types of cases, it's typical that we don't talk to the defendant to alter any of their opinions about the case.
Actually, Dr. Lopez, you requested specifically to speak with that defendant right there.
That's right, that's standard practice, and as usual, I was denied to speak to them because they did not want me to influence anything.
This defense counsel right here, they denied that request.
Yes?
This defense counsel the defendant maybe could have told you that Parker was tripping on roots all day.
I do not know what they could have told me.
She could have helped confirm your conclusions.
Again, I do not know.
But you were never able to confirm your conclusions because the defense counsel denied your request to speak with the defendant.
Not exactly. I was not able to confirm everything due to what I had available for the case.
And you never had the availability of the defendant to speak to.
Again, no, that's standard practice.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Lopez, as far as you know, did Dr. Quincy have the opportunity to speak to the defendant?
I do not believe so, no.
Next, Dr. Quincy, were you under oath when speaking to the press?
I was not, no.
And Have you ever lied in court before?
Absolutely not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any further cross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.